Good morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Inclake automatic watch winder. This automatic watch winder is available from watchwindermall.com for €119. If you're purchasing it from watchwindermall.com, please feel free to use the following discount code WATCHLOVE. That will give you 10% discount off the €119 purchase price. Now, alternatively, if you'd prefer to buy the watch winder from Amazon, it's also available from amazon.de for €129, and I'll put some discount codes for that in the comment section below the video. So you have those two options. For example, if you'd like to pay by PayPal, you can buy it from watchwindermall.com, but if you prefer to purchase it from Amazon, that's also an option. So firstly, let's look at the other items one gets with the watch winder, and then I'll talk you through the watch winder itself. So the Inclake automatic watch winder comes with this very comprehensive owner's instruction manual booklet, which has several photographs and diagrams detailing every aspect of the operation of the automatic watch winder, translated into multiple foreign languages, and it's very thorough, a very useful read if you're unfamiliar with automatic watch winders. On the reverse of the booklet, it has a QR code, so if you have an Android or iPhone, you can scan the QR code and that will upload it to your smartphone. One also gets this microfiber polishing cloth, and one also gets two pairs of cushions which the watches sit on. So for reference, I'm currently using the two large cushions, and to demonstrate the watch winder, I'm using my Steinhardt Ocean 139mm. So these two standard size cushions will suit watches if they're sized for 6 to 7 inch wrist, and if you have a larger wrist, a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you will use the large cushions. As you can see, they're rotating in the watch winder. So I think it's a credit to Inclake that they've included two pairs of cushions to suit different size bracelets on watches, so standard sets and also two large ones in the watch winder. With regards to power, one has three options. One can use batteries to power the watch winder, or alternatively this USB power lead. So for example, you can plug the watch winder into your laptop using the USB cable provided, and on the other end there's a power AC jack plug. So it's very good that you have that option. Now I'm using the 2-pin AC plug adapter, and personally I think that's the best option, to use mains power rather than use the USB port on your laptop, because it will drain the battery or drain your laptop's power supply. So as you can see, it's working on the cycle of clockwise, and then it will rotate anti-clockwise. One thing I really like about it is the lid of the watch winder has micro switches, so when you open the lid, it automatically stops. You don't need to switch it off at the plug, and you don't need to switch it off at the back of the watch winder. So for example, you can remove watches and replace them without having to switch it off. So as I've discussed, these are the large cushions, and you can see that it has an L denoting that it's the large size, and I'll just compare it to the standard size for reference. And as you can see, there's a difference in size between the cushions. This is a sponge-like material. It's like a silicone rubber, so I think that it would be suitable for all watch sizes, for 7 to 8 inch size bracelets, and I'm certainly finding it a good snug fit on my bracelet of my Steinhardt Ocean 139mm, which is sized for my 8 inch wrist. So when one closes the lid, it automatically starts the watch winder again on its cycle, so I really like that aspect. Another thing I really like about it is the fact that the hinges, which are a chromed finish, they have two screws in each side of the hinges, so very good quality. Often on cheaper watch winders, they have just one screw in the hinge on each side, and the problem with that is often the screws actually pull out of the body of the watch winder, and the problem is you only have one screw hole, so you can't actually get a good fixing when you replace the screw with a longer one. So I think this is going to be a more durable design, because it has two pairs of screws in each of the chromed steel hinges. So very good design. Now another feature I like about it is the LED blue backlight, and as you can see, it's an absolute pleasure to observe the watches winding through the Perspex screen. I'm just going to turn the lights out and you can see how it looks in the dark. So as you can see, very aesthetically pleasing to watch your watches winding in the dark. And one thing I want to say about this that I really like is the motor is silent running. There's no noise from it whatsoever. So for example, if you're planning on using this automatic watch winder overnight in your bedroom while you're sleeping, it's not going to disturb you with a buzzing noise from the motor. That's often a problem with cheaper automatic watch winders. They have Chinese motors which are very noisy, but I was very impressed with how silent running this automatic watch winder is. Now I'll just show you the back of it and then I'll talk you through the other functions of it. So as you can see on the reverse, it's branded with Inclake in silver, which is the manufacturer. There's a function selector knob and there are 5 functions. So for example, you can have the watch winder rotating anti-clockwise or alternatively clockwise, or you can run it on a cycle alternating between clockwise then anti-clockwise. There's also another cycle which pauses between clockwise and anti-clockwise rotation rather than running continuously. So nice to have those 5 cycle options. Now you'll note that there's 2 power switches, the red one and also the black one. The red one switches on and off the LED backlight and the black one switches off the motor. And that's something I like about this, because often it's the case with backlit automatic watch winders. There's simply one power switch to switch the whole thing on or off. And that means that you can't just leave the watch winder running overnight with the light switched off. So for example, if you were running this in a bedroom, you might want to turn the light out because it could keep you awake at night. And I really like the functionality of being able to just isolate switching off the LED backlight but leave the watch winder power on to power the motor. This plastic panel is for the batteries, so you simply remove the lid and you can put in batteries if you're not near a power supply. Personally, I would recommend that you run it either on the USB charger lead off your laptop, or alternatively use the mains power lead with a 2-pin plug, because if you run it off batteries you'll find that it is quite power hungry and it will use the batteries quite quickly. On the underside, one thing I like about it is it's fully coated with a felt material, and that means that if you have this on a polished or varnished desk or table or a cabinet for example, it's not going to scratch it. So it's a very good attention to detail that it has that foam piece of fabric on the base. Nice design. It's high quality, high polished lacquer throughout, and it's absolutely flawless finish. It's like a mirror finish to the very dark chocolate brown grained finish of the wood. And I really like the glazing with perspex. It's both aesthetically pleasing, but it's also very practical because it insulates the noise of the winder, even though it's got a silent running motor. It means that when the lid's closed, you cannot hear the watches rotating whatsoever. So very well thought out design, very well executed, very aesthetically pleasing, and also finished to a very high standard. Nice bevel on the edge of the lid. Now, with regards to the price points, it's €119 minus 10% discount when you buy it from watchwindermall.com. So one could say that that's quite an expensive price, bearing in mind that this is a 2-piece watch winder. One could obviously find less expensive watch winders, but however, I think the quality of this watch winder is very good. With regards to the switches on the back, they have good positive clicks. Like if you look at the selector here for setting the cycles, it's got a nice firm positive click between each cycle. It doesn't feel like a cheap quality switch which is going to fail after 6 months or 12 months of use. It's got a good solid clicking action which I really like, and also think it's very aesthetically pleasing because it has a nice aluminium polished finish to it. Now, with regards to the power switches, they're also very solid. They've got a good positive click on and off. So I'm absolutely confident with regards to the durability. The AC power plug, as you can see, simply plugs in, and again that's got a nice positive spring-loaded action. So I've every confidence that this is going to last a good length of time. So are there any negatives to it? Well, no. I think that this is a very well made watch winder, and I think that overall it's well finished. And yes, it is €119. It's more expensive than cheaper alternatives, but I think that the important thing is one is getting a silent running watch winder. Often it's a problem with inexpensive watch winders that they're cheap to buy, but the problem is the motor is very noisy. So for example, you can't use it in a bedroom because it will keep you awake at night. But I really like that aspect of this one, that it is absolutely silent running. Now, with regards to replacing the watches, you simply put the watch on and you slide it in, and it's a very snug fit. But one thing I like about it is it has an X formation, as you can see, and the purpose of that is you can also use this to wind your wife's watches or your girlfriend's watch by putting her watch around it this way rather than longitudinally. You can put it across, and so it has that dual purpose. For example, you could put your wife or girlfriend's watch in at the same time as yours, and you can wind both watches. For reference, this is the 39mm Ocean 1, as I've discussed, and as you can see, there's plenty of clearance between the watch when it's winding and the underside of the Perspex glazed screen. So it's not going to scuff it, it's not going to catch it, and that's another problem one often gets with two-piece watch winders. Plenty of space around it to rotate, so it's not going to catch. And I'm confident that this watch winder would easily fit up to two 45mm watches with no problems whatsoever. They're not going to bang off each other, and they're not going to foul the interior or the Perspex screen. So very well executed in terms of its design, its proportions and its functionality. Very simple to use. Now I'll just talk you through the cycles, because if you're unfamiliar with automatic watch winders, you might not understand how long do you need to put your watch on it for. So as you can see, there's 5 cycles, and I've currently got it running on the clockwise and anti-clockwise continuous cycles, so it's going to rotate bidirectionally. Now, if you have an automatic movement, I'll give you 2 examples, such as a Seiko NH35A, or alternatively an ETA 2824-2. They're both 40-hour power reserve automatic movements. They run at the industry standard of 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. So how long do you need to put those automatic movements, those watches, on a watch winder to keep them topped up to that power reserve of 40 hours? Well, between 800 and 1200 turns per day is the answer. So this watch winder will wind the watch at 1000 turns per day if you run it on the clockwise anti-clockwise cycle non-stop. And if you run it for 12 hours per night, for example between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m, that will suffice in fully charging up the automatic movement, because it will wind the rotor bidirectionally, both clockwise and anti-clockwise, for 12 hours straight. And that has the effect of winding up the mainspring to its absolute maximum 40-hour power reserve. So that's what you want to do. I would advise you run an automatic watch for 12 hours between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m, and that will suffice in keeping it topped up to 40 hours. Now, usually automatic movements, they have rotors which spin bidirectionally, and when the rotor spins clockwise and anti-clockwise, it has the same winding effect. So it doesn't matter if the watch winder rotates clockwise or anti-clockwise, it has the same winding effect. But however, some automatic movements only have a unidirectional rotor, and I'll give you an example of that. The Miyota 9015, for example, that only has a unidirectional rotor, which only winds the movement when the rotor spins anti-clockwise. When it spins clockwise, it doesn't wind the movement. So I would say to you, be careful. If you have a Miyota powered watch, you will need to select the anti-clockwise direction for the cycle, because if you run it for 12 hours clockwise, it's not going to wind the movement. So if you're unsure about the direction of your movement, if it's a bidirectional rotor or a unidirectional rotor, my advice is to run it on a cycle that rotates both clockwise and anti-clockwise, and therefore it doesn't matter, it will cover it and it will charge it up to 40 hours of power reserve. So as you can see, I'm currently winding my Steinhardt Ocean 1 39mm, and that has a Sellita SW200-1, which has a bidirectional rotor. It winds the movement both clockwise and anti-clockwise. So it really doesn't matter in which direction it runs, and in this case it's on a cycle which will turn clockwise then anti-clockwise. So that's all you need to bear in mind. 12 hours on the automatic winder, and also you need to have it rotating clockwise and anti-clockwise for peace of mind. Some collectors are against the use of automatic watch winders because they have this misconception that it's going to prematurely wear out the movement because it's running for 12 hours straight, and that doesn't really simulate true watch wear. It's not the same as wearing the watch on the wrist for 12 hours, because in an ordinary 12-hour day, you're not going to be moving your wrist around constantly for 12 hours. A lot of that 12-hour period, your wrist is going to be static in one position, and therefore the rotor is not going to be winding the mainspring in the movement. But however, if you select a cycle that runs clockwise then anti-clockwise, that does simulate similar movement to a wrist. In fact, it will be more efficient in winding the mainspring because the movement is constantly being wound. Now, don't worry about overwinding your movement, because in automatic movements there's a clutch mechanism, so if the mainspring becomes wound to its absolute maximum, 40 hours, the clutch will release the extra torsion in the mainspring, so therefore you won't damage the movement by overwinding it. And as I've discussed, between 800 and 1200 turns per day will suffice in winding the movement. But for example, if you exceed the 1200 turns per day with the automatic winder, it's not going to be detrimental and damage the movement or the main spring by overwinding it. The clutch will release the extra torsion. So really there are no negatives, and as you can see, it's now moving to the anti-clockwise cycle automatically, so it's very effective. There are no negatives to using an automatic movement winder. They don't prematurely wear out the movement. I personally think it's more healthy for the movement to wind the movements in both clockwise and anti-clockwise, as you can see I'm doing here, because that circulates the lubricant and all the parts in two directions, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. I actually think it's worse for the movement to push the rotor around clockwise continually or anti-clockwise continually, because that has the effect of driving the lubricant around the gears in one direction, and it also wears the gears because the lubricant is travelling in one direction around the movement rather than two directions, covering all the gears with lubricant. So my advice to you is use it for 12 hours and use it on the bi-directional cycle, so have it clockwise then anti-clockwise as I'm showing you, and you won't have any problems whatsoever. So lastly, I'll surmise the Inclake automatic watch winder. What do I think of it overall? Well, I think that at €119 minus 10% discount when bought from watchwindermall.com, yes, it is excellent quality, and yes, one could argue it's also excellent value. You can find less expensive watch winders, but with automatic watch winders it comes down to one gets what one pays for, like buying a watch. So really I would say to you it's worth investing in a good quality watch winder like this, because it's going to last a good length of time. The motor isn't noisy, and you also have the option of switching out the backlight if you want to sleep at night and use it in a bedroom, for example. So there are no negatives to it whatsoever. I think it's very well made. I think the finishing is good. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. And I think the price point is reasonable. So I hope you've liked my review of the Inclake automatic watch winder. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.